Do me a favor, Casey, are you on Facebook?
Yeah.
Can you check Nuestra Palabra, Latino Writers Having Their Say, which is where this live stream is supposed to be going on, just to see if it's on? Nuestra Palabra, Latino Writers Having Their Say. Thanks for letting me do this. No. Folks for coming on time. So there's a new definition of Latino time. And I'm going to have Alice talk a little bit. But guess what, Alice? Not only are we not in person only, we now have the FM radio show, which you're familiar with. We also air on fox26houston.com. And then, of course, it's also a podcast. So Rodrigo Bravo takes the elements, makes it a podcast. And he is one of our sound engineers who helps us change things and make things sound great. But what I love is that if you're tuning in today, it's because this is the last leg of the 3-city tour. And all made possible by the Latino Bookstore. Yay. The other thing is, we've been having these events in book deserts throughout Texas. So, believe it or not, Houston, Texas, which is the largest city in Texas, 4th largest city in America, how many Latino bookstores do you think they have?
4.
You win. 0. Austin, how many Latino bookstores do you think Austin has? Include them, include universities. How many do you think Latino bookstores?
Maybe 1.
0. How many Latino bookstores are there in Texas? And you're in it. You are in it. What that means is that this is such an important facility for several reasons. We are in a book desert. All of our communities are in book deserts. We started at the Gulfton neighborhood in Houston, which is a big Central American, Salvadoran American, Guatemalan American community. No bookstores around there at all. Actually, not just a book desert for Latino books. There are no bookstores around there at all. And then we're going to be hearing the wonderful poetry of Claudia Castro in a little bit with her book Cipota Under the Moon, which is a powerful book. But I mention all that because I really applaud her for being willing to jump in a car. So as legal traficantes, we're used to doing this. Not everybody's used to just jumping in cars, buses, or vans and going city to city. So we started in Houston. She jumped in the car, to the 3 hours to Austin. Jumped in the car for the 1.5 hours with traffic, though. What's up with that? It's like 2 hours from Austin. It was crazy. But you said, I want to get to the people, which is fantastic. And I also want to let you know That was possible because the Latino bookstore ordered the books. So we went to where the community is, and we brought your book. We had Leticia Urieta reading with us for Las Escrituras yesterday in Austin. And we went to the community. We're so happy San Antonio shares its abundance. Because this is San Antonio's crown, of many jewels it has. This is a crown jewel. But you gotta share it. You gotta share it because the other cities don't have this. And this is one way to do it. So in Houston, the Libre Traficante Trail begins because that's where the Libre Traficantes were founded. Thank you. And then, of course, Nuestra Palabra Latino, where the Chef Say was also founded in Houston. But there we were able to do it in the Gulfton area at the Alta Arts, beautiful new facility in Gulfton neighborhood. Then from there we went to La Peña Cultural Center in Austin, which is we should applaud them. So La Peña Cultural Center focuses on visual arts more than other arts. But now, after our Libre Traficante caravan of banned books to Austin, we're following up, and we gave them some books for an underground library. They've set it up beautifully. It's gorgeous. So if you go there, I want to remind folks, it's on 6th and Congress. You can see the Capitol building from the front of the building. You know you're there because it says tacos and art. And when you walk in, visual art all over. It's beautiful. And then in the back, it really feels like you're going in an underground library. Because you kind of gotta know and have the gumption to go back there. There they have set up the books that were donated from all over, including some of the banned books of now, but there's also banned books from 10 years ago when Arizona banned Mexican American Studies and we became Libre Traficantes. Feel free to boo Arizona banning, boo. I'm so glad the community united to overturn that. But I do want to name those facilities because it's our community creating spaces that we can then come and visit. And it takes great writers that have the vision to go there and be open to jumping in going city to city. And each one's a little different, but also the partnerships. It's made possible because of the Latino bookstore. I'm Tony Diaz, the Libre Traficante, founder of Nuestra Palabra, Latino Writers Having Their Say. I'm the literary curator here. I love being a book smuggler.
Yes.
We're good at it. We're good at it. Tenemos un don para eso, But I also know we are the mainstream. We have a long history. We have a legacy. We should have. Dígame.
100 years ago, in the 1990s, and you were saying, where is our representation? I'm still asking that question. We have Gente Fi, we have a few other things, but it looks like the United States of America is African American people and white people. Yeah. Oh, wait, and Asian people.
And for the folks on the live stream, and I'll just remind you, so we're live streaming live right now. It's on Nuestra Palabra, Latino Writers Having Their Say Facebook page. It's going to air on fox26houston.com. The audio will air on our radio show on 90.1 FM, KPFT, and of course it's on social media. But Alice was going to speak in a little bit. She's been a volunteer for Nuestra Palabra going decades back. She lives in San Antonio now. But she was one of our early volunteers. Her daughter Tanzi is a wonderful poet. It's great to see her in the anthology Hecho en Texas, the anthology of Texas Mexican literature, which I think we sold out. Do we still have copies of Hecho en Texas? We might.
I didn't check.
We'll have to check. We may have a couple of copies. So.
I'm lobbying. I need to get word to that. We need volume 2. It's been enough time. More writing has been written, and new writers are coming up that need that.
You're going to have to ask Dagoberto Gil the editor yourself, because I don't think he wants to do it. Oh, he'll answer that Wisache magazine is coming out. So a new issue of Wisache magazine will be out here. We'll have it at the bookstore. That will be his reply, unless you melt his heart. So, but you were saying that back in the day, in the 1990s, let's from 1998, we were saying, where's our representation? Some things are better, some things are worse. And if we look at corporate broadcast media, corporate marketing, we're invisible. And that is still the case. I'll take that further. If you watch corporate news, we're not experts about ourselves. So when they talk about Latino issues, there's only 3 issues that they give us. You saw it during these recent tragedies. They don't come to us as experts about ourselves. So it's just getting worse, except because we didn't bring you here to get depressed. So we're bringing you here to get inspired. Moments and places like this. Writers like you, volunteers like you, folks like you that will go to the community and make sure that the voices are heard. And there's many of us now. So I do want to say that it is building. You asked a great question. If you look to corporate media, you will not find the answer. You have to come to our community spaces, revitalize and keep pushing. And we're more of us are working together. On that note, I do want to bring up one of our former volunteers. She's a dear friend of mine, Alice Canastrero Garcia, who is a visual artist, former teacher, and retired. Say who we love, retired. It really is wonderful to see you, and if we have any success, it's because of the work of you and so many others. So please welcome Alice to say a few words.
Very kind words, Tony. Thank you very much. Many volunteers in Houston put the monthly showcases together. I was on the video crew. That was way too much fun. Dangerous even, but the performers, the poets, the writers, the singers, and what Tony and Alvaro Sarrios and the current poet laureate of Texas, Lupe Mendez, and so many amazing people would show up like clockwork. The talent had to show up like about, we laid out the mics and lighting and stuff at 4 o'clock. The talent had to be there by like 6:30, and then the show went on. Tony would mesmerize the people with his beauty and charm and beautiful voice and great eye contact, Tony. So, really, that was one of the things I would coach some of the new in middle school writers, because that's what Tony would do. He would set up, contact the elders, contact the young people, and then the monthly major writer that was doing a national tour. And it was so much fun, so educational in the most fun way you can get education. So it's ongoing and growing. So, and I'm so glad. I think before I left Houston, I put a thought in your ear that, when you're doing the Hawaii tour, that I kind of I'd like to be on that one for sure. But I'm so grateful that Nuestra Palabra is continuing the essential work of spreading the word, expanding the word, getting the word written, published. So thank you. Volunteers are really a good thing to have. And Tony, thank you for leading us. Thank you for showing the light, shining the light. Bless you all.
Gracias. Thank you so much. I love you dearly, love your family dearly, and you've given so much to us. It's great to see the fruits of the labor. I will say this too, we're a blessed generation. Not many folks get to see the fruits of their labor. There have been other generations that, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have degrees. They worked so hard, they were so gifted, so talented, they pushed hard. They don't see the fruits of their labor. We're seeing that. And on that note, I do want to mention some of the other partners that are working to get this going. Of course, we have Cristina Bai, who's the director of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center. This is one of their many disciplines. There's about 7 disciplines that are taking place right here, including the upcoming Cine Festival, which starts next week. You've got the posters in this. This is the art gallery component. These posters are from 40 years of conjunto festivals that have been going on. The dance company just celebrated several decades of existence as well. I guess we're the new kid. The bookstore is the new kid, and we're very happy that that's here. So that's one partner. I also want to mention the publication of the book. And next up is going to be Claudia Castro Luna with her beautiful book, Cipota Under the Moon. But I do want to point out several aspects, including it's published by Tia Chucha Press. And as you know, the founder or co-founder of Tia Chucha Press is Luis Rodriguez, who's a very wonderful Chicano writer. Former poet laureate of Los Angeles and current gubernatorial candidate of California, you know, which is awesome. He was also on the curriculum that was outlawed in Arizona. So it's wonderful that, you know, you have a Chicano publishing beautiful work talking about the Salvadoran American experience. And I've gotten to find out so much about you, the Salvadoran experience, including the fact that you mentioned this is your 4th book. And when you hear the writing, it's amazing. When I found out that there wasn't a line of 30 publishers trying to publish this potent work, it goes back to your point, Alice. Our representation is hurt because the folks that run the corporate publishing world, the corporate marketing world, they don't understand this. And I do want to say a little something about the tour in Gulfton. So Houston is the largest city in Texas, 4th largest city in America, 2 million people, supposedly 45% are Latino. I think that's an undercount. So possibly at least 900,000 people are Latino in Houston, right? At least. Second, of course, Mexican Americans are the largest part of that. The next largest group are Central Americans. So in Houston, there's an entire neighborhood called Gulfton that's the focus of the Central American experience. And they have a lot of infrastructure, a lot of folks there. I want to tell you, I didn't know about the struggles until I got to Houston and was working with a group called Crescent, and they were helping families file for political asylum because they were running from some of the civil wars you're going to write about in El Salvador. And the more I found out, the U.S. was not granting political asylum because the U.S. was involved in some of those wars. And it appears they couldn't recognize their own role in it and would not recognize that there was a war and just give these families political asylum. I didn't know about any of that till I got involved with that community. So I think we as Chicanos must get involved with our other family members of the Latino family tree because their struggle is our struggle. Powerful poetry in this book, but in Gulfton, people were weeping. Their hearts were touched by the stories, not just because it's the highest level of aesthetics and skill, but because it's speaking to them. And I saw it with my own eyes. What we saw on that stage, 25 years ago almost. The moment someone finally sees their story told, it opens up their eyes and hearts. We have to keep doing it, and we can, and it's going to keep growing. You're in for a treat. It's going to be a wonderful reading. You're very generous with your brilliance. It's been fantastic to do this fun tour. And please give a warm welcome to Claudia Castro Luna as she reads from her new book, Cipota Under the Moon. Welcome to San Antonio.
Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes. Let me see if I could adjust. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. Gracias por venir. Thank you so much for being here and joining us. This has been an adventure of a lifetime because we have been moving from city to city, being in community and reading and just getting to know each other also. And it was a dream of mine to come to Houston, because when my family came from El Salvador, we went to Miami. And from Miami, we went to New Jersey. And from New Jersey, we went to California. And now I live in Washington State. So Houston had always occupied a space in my imagination, but I'd never been there. And I'm so thankful to you, Tony, for orchestrating this amazing tour and for bringing me to these various communities around Texas that is not the normal way in which books get distributed, right? Normally a book tour means you go to bookstores. And we have gone around that because this space here is a bookstore and way more, right? It's a bookstore, yes, but it's also a cultural center, a gathering space. And we have shown, I think, in our tour that it's possible to do a book tour and not go into, a more corporate space, right? To really be con la gente. And it's just such a joy for me to return home tomorrow. And with this experience in my heart, and to be able to come back. Because now I've been to Texas. Now I know what I was missing. And I do plan to come back. So thank you so much to the Guadalupe Latino Bookstore, and to Libro Traficante, to Nuestra Palabra, and the BIPOC Arts Network, and La Peña Cultural Center in Austin, all the people, and the Alta Arts in Houston that made this possible for me. It's really amazing. And yes, I think we've talked a lot about the visibility that you're addressing, and certainly in Alta Arts, we witness the way in which Central Americans, and this in particular, the story of Salvadorans, is invisibilized, right? I mean, I was at a college once giving a lecture, and as I was leaving, somebody said, "We'd love to have you. You could come back for Cinco de Mayo." And I thought to myself, I don't even know that a Mexican American or a Mexican person would want to come back for Cinco de Mayo, let alone a Salvadoran person, right? I mean, such a disconnect, such a not understanding of our individual stories. And I think we're all the stronger when we understand each other's particularities. Compartimos una cultura, compartimos un idioma, compartimos historias, pero dentro de todo eso también hay diferencias. And understanding those differences and holding them and celebrating them is what's going to make us stronger. So, Cipota under the moon, Cipota, does anybody here know what the word Cipota means? Yeah. Niña. ¿Eres salvadoreño? Okay. ¿Cómo sabes que es?
Porque he estado alrededor de gente de Centroamérica desde hace muchos años, en Atlanta, Salvador, y es muy diferente el lenguaje.
Yeah.
No quiere decir algo malo, pero es como un niño.
Yeah, es un niño. Yeah. Oh, gracias.
Yo me ofendí.
Oh, sí, no es un insulto.
¿Qué es chilpayate?
Chilpayate.
Es un niño también.
Ya.
Ellos se enojaron cuando les dije chilpayate.
Porque es otra palabra. Que tiene una influencia indígena, ¿no? Esas palabras. Ya, como cipota, cipote. So, en El Salvador, nobody says niño. Sos cipote, sos cipota. Or sos is how eres cipota o eres cipote. And so I really liked that the publisher, Luis Rodriguez, was on board with calling this book Cipota Under the Moon. Because I think that a more mainstream publisher would have said, what's that word? That's weird. We don't want that. But here we have somebody who totally has an understanding of our background and said, yeah, let's name it Cipota, which just means girl. So I'm going to start with, this book is divided in 4 sections. The first section is a witnessing of the Salvadoran Civil War. So we are here, Salvadorans, and I will speak only for the Salvadoran experience, because there was a civil war in El Salvador in the in the 1980s, but really started much earlier. But in the 1980s, it exploded. And it is the trigger for the now over 1 million Salvadorans. We are the 4th largest Latino group in the US. And of course, it's always undercounted, right? So 1 million official, but there's many of us here. And many of us who have been born in the US now. So we have people like me who was born in El Salvador, lived through the war, and then there are those who have been born here, who are children of immigrants. And this is a history for me that is really important to document and to tell, especially as a person like myself who witnessed it. And especially because I was a child. I was 12, 13, 14. And we don't have those accounts of the impact of state violence on children. I mean, we're talking about Ukraine now. This is the same story, right? And not only in Ukraine, but Syria, Afghanistan, Palestine, all of those places where war is happening and affecting the lives of children. So that's how this book is positioned. So I'll start with this poem titled Tyranny of the Milky Way. Can you all hear me? Yeah? Okay. The way clouds taste as they go from castles to rabbits above your head. You are 12, your skin damp from the humid tropical day, the grass under your arms and legs benign, even if itching. The way a million stars scatter at night, and you, in jersey gown and bare feet, seek the same spot from earlier in the day to count far away incandescent rocks. Tucked behind your ear, your secret wish to spot a single UFO. The way a slice of tres leches cake on your 13th birthday surrenders in unison on your tongue its sweet milks. The way at 12 you tasted marvel, and by 14 you tasted war. So this next poem is titled Hija de los Días. My 14th birthday happened in a November lost to a brackish year. Newspaper headlines from the first 16 days of that month listed the following. On the second day, 10 bodies of unidentified young men were found ditched on the road to Apulo. 2 days later, a man was gunned down and killed in his car in northern San Salvador. The following day, another man succumbed when his furniture store was attacked. On the 7th, in the city of Santa Ana, a 13-year-old boy and 4 adults were attacked and killed. On the 15th, a union leader died of gunshot wounds. The next day, a colonel, his wife, and his children, 11 and 15, were carbonized when incendiary bombs exploded in their house. Pet days and plucks of hope. My parents did not sing my birthday. They must have felt war's vertigo, the gathering of ashes inside people and things. These days, I pull weeds in my garden and just as soon new ones leaf back up. Is that resilience? Happy birthday, Papa. Happy birthday, Mama. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. I know it's hard to look at the historical record of El Salvador. So this is an actual story. I'm not making this up, right? This is actually taken from the historical record, these deaths that I'm relating. My birthday is the 15th of November, so I'm really telling what I gathered from my research about what was going on. And I read that now and I think it's impossible, it's just so unbelievable that we lived through the terror of the Salvadoran Civil War when you look at it on paper. And, you know, we survived. I'm here. You know, I'm reading these poems. You may have relatives or have friends. I mean, you've known people from El Salvador, right? And the thing is, we wouldn't be here had it not been for the US, who got deeply involved and sent billions of dollars in military aid to El Salvador and destabilized the whole region, you know? So it's always, what you said before, Tony, about we're never experts on ourselves. You know, there's always like, can you tell me about the, you know, Latino experience, and the person being asked is not Latino. This happens to Salvadorans a lot, where they'll go to ask an expert, but never to the people who lived this, you know, war, right? It happens all the time. I mean, I think that was very much in the back of my mind as I was working on this book. Like, I had an urgency to get these poems down, because they tell a story from the point of view of somebody who actually lived this, from my family who got splintered, from family members who died, right? And when we see those people asking for asylum at the border, at your border here, it's not, I mean, by that I mean that this is where Mexico and the US meets, and where this tragedy is happening, that people are being denied asylum. It's not because people just decided one day to pick up their bags and start walking across Mexico. It's because it's coming from this, right? So this poem is titled Caravans. Marching to the tune of millions of dollars in military aid, a caravan sent out in 1980 from the United States toward El Salvador. Marching to the tune of millions of dollars in military aid, a caravan set out in 1980 from the United States toward El Salvador. As part of it, more than 32,000 M16A1 and A2 rifles snake southward, each machine capable of dislodging 800 rounds of ammunition per minute, 800 bullets per minute on the first day, on the second, and every subsequent day for 12 years. Years of dispatching obedient bullets to seek and kill the soft bodies that were their targets. 3 decades and thousands of deaths later, a new caravan, not of weapons, but of war survivors, inches north to the place where the rifles came from. Women pushing strollers, fathers and sons, fathers and daughters walking hundreds of miles, walking. A boy walks wearing a scapular, the cloth soaked with holy water now encrusted with sweat. A woman walks carrying fresh fear in her belly, the inevitability of their steps over their silent and forgetting. On the way, an angry river drowns the voices of a young father and his toddler daughter. The two face down, her little arm around his neck. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Sometimes the line in question bends on itself, takes a rapacious detour, orbits around the sun a few times. So it is that yesterday's bullets claim bodies today. Thank you. And maybe I'll read 3 more poems. This one's titled Noticias, and this, again, in this tour, you know, when you leave a country like El Salvador and the violence, gender violence, the violence of environmental degradation, the violence of political repression, all these different violences that Central Americans have endured, we make it here, right? I've been living in the United States now for over 40 years. We make it here, and you think we made it. And then you end up in a city or in a place where there's the violence of racism. There's the violence of guns, you know, and suddenly you're in another war that is looking a little different, but it's violence once again, right? So this is titled Noticias. Each morning, news of the dead. Today, a headline says, homicides are up and a weary community mourns. Most times, articles list the names of the dead, of the departed. This morning, the headline reads simply, "Men shot." Somewhere, someone tastes the bitterness, mourns the gait of his step, the sound of his voice, his funny bone. The truth is, today's news smells like old news, like the nameless dead that appeared across El Salvador in the days of the war, broken up, tortured, and left in ditches for birds' beaks. The truth is, in El Salvador, the dead are still showing up bald and nameless. The truth is, it happens here too. The truth is, they are dead and we are not. The truth is, we pilfer them, the dead. We leech them for purpose and sharpen pride against their bones. They alone can tell where we are going, and they always know what the piñata holds. And yet, you know, despite the violence, we still have piñatas, we still have together, we still celebrate, we still gather, we still insist, right? And there's that joy also that we carry despite all of that. And that is an amazing feat. That is an amazing feat. This one, the last part of the book, is very much about going back to El Salvador after spending so much time here and longing for it, but being afraid to go back because of the war wounds and the trauma that in my head, many times, El Salvador is what it was in 1980 when Monsignor Romero got killed and I was in El Salvador, or when the Maryknoll nuns, the American Maryknoll nuns got murdered on the way to the airport and I was living there, right? So, it's very hard to go back, and I have to trick myself mentally to say, I'm going back, but it's not what it was, it's something new. I don't know what it is, but my family's still there. I have cousins, my father lives there. So I go back and visit, but there's always that moment of tricking myself. So this is titled Ensalada, and ensalada is a drink. Ensalada is a salad, of course. But in El Salvador, cuando dices ensalada, it's a drink. And the drink, believe it or not, has salad leaves in it that are chopped really finely. And it has marañón and piña, and my kids love it. I've taught them how to make it. So this is called ensalada. I am here again sitting, reading in the courtyard of the adobe house where I grew up, in its belly button, which is also mine. Its lush garden, one long sigh of glistening leaves, lanceolate and sagittate, orbicular and reniform, each leaf an emerald goddess. Birds sing today of yesterday, and their trilling enchants and enlivens everything. Up above a limpid sky, I return to this place often. To this place I return, always to the trees and the leaves, to the red-tiled roof, to the doves. I return to it and drink all of it, heaven and earth, leaf, flower, stone, like a tall glass of chilled pineapple juice. Better yet, a glass of ensalada, pedacitos de piña, lechuga y mamey, pedacitos de infancia, de recuerdos locos y a veces tristes también. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll close with the closing poem of the collection, which is called "Leave the Gate Open on Your Way Out." On a quiet street, a bloom-laden rose bush leans into the sidewalk. Its orange flowers swirl and pulse buds shoot up to meet the sun, which in time will ripen their promise. On the same bush, next to fragrance and splendor, in quiet hush, invalid roses drop fading petals one by one. At the end of the street stands a hospital. It houses a morgue and a maternity ward. My own 3 children were born within its walls. To give birth is a revolution. Leave the gate open on your way out. Better for the angels and the devil to come and go. The path to happiness is by way of pain and sorrow. That is something my abuela could have said. On the quiet street, many pass by the rosebush, exuberant or crestfallen. The shrub stands ready to share loss and joy, but only with those who stop to smell its roses. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Can we do a round of questions? Yeah. So we've ended up the meetings by I once upon a time, I served as the poet laureate of the state of Washington. And I got to travel extensively through Washington State. And I ended my meetings always with a Q&A, and it was always the best part of the meeting. So I always love to end with questions. And if there's a chance to read another poem as a way of answering a question, I'd be happy to do that. But I don't know. I don't know if any of you have questions about El Salvador or...
Yeah. A question about the book itself, the plot of the story.
Yes.
Could you briefly tell us what it is?
The plot of the book itself?
Yes, please.
Yeah, well, Cipota Under the Moon refers, it comes from a blog that I started eons ago called Cipota Bajo la Luna, obviously because my last name is Luna. And the Cipota in question is myself, of course. But it really, it's funny that you asked that because the book can be read as an anti-war book. It is an anti-war book. And it is a book, not only is an anti-war book, but it's a book that really, one of the thought strands through the book is to show how violence affects children and how that the impact and the trauma sometimes may not be visible until many years later, right? I mean, here I am, 40 years after my family left, and I swear to you, there's not a day in which I don't deal with the aftermath of the trauma. Physically, I'm talking physically, because it affected me physically. And so I think I'm just one, and I'm a lucky one. I'm alive. I have, my faculties, right? So, but there are many Salvadorans who, there was a terrible market for children in El Salvador during the war. Many children were robbed and stolen. There was many people who lost limbs that don't get accounted for, the impact, right? So there's a lot of people like in any war. Vietnam too is the same way. Many people lost limbs because of bombs and other detonants on roads and so on. So yeah, the book begins with my story as a child, and it focuses on the story of my sister as we went to school and went to swimming lessons and had birthdays and navigated the war. People managed to do things, to live despite that kind of violence. And so the second part of the book is being in the United States as an immigrant and dealing with the different kinds of violences that I spoke before. The third part of the book is my return to El Salvador, the few times that I've come back. And the last part really is just, it's kind of like aquí nomás, I'm here, And I have, there was a time where I couldn't say the things I just said without crumbling and crying. to say, you know, I survived the war is a terrible thing to have to say. And so I would completely be overwhelmed by that. And writing about it has helped me understand myself and our history, and I'm able to speak about it from a different position, if that makes sense. So that's kind of that's the trajectory of the book. Yeah. So I could read the opening poem to that question. This is called Agua de Beber. Once there was a girl who lived in a country called Fear. There her fingers cracked and split into sharp mouths that screamed when she could not scream. Sometimes her hands itched and she scratched them viciously. With the scratching, her pores swelled. At peak moments they burst, releasing the liquid within. The girl feared many things, but death most of all, not her own, but that of her parents, through whom she saw and valued the world. That little girl's still around. She lives inside me, sneaking pistachio ice cream whenever she can. Now, when my hands begin to crack and split, I panic and recoil from the pain this causes, and from the pain they cause the girl. Long ago, my hands learned to cry in my stead. They carved deltas at the tip of my fingers that took me to ocean. Oh, how deep, how vast the great water, how it sloshes inside my belly. Oh, how beautiful the world to which I belong. So, yeah, thank you. That's the first poem that kind of encompasses the whole thrust of the book.
I'm going to use my hosting privileges in essence. Two questions, you can just answer one or both. One is, I didn't know about the children being sequestered, kidnapped. And then two, it's dawning on me I knew from reading the poems the power of the Luna, it's your name, etc. But it's coming out more. I wouldn't mind you talking about that. So that's two questions.
Yeah. So during the war, you know, there was a black market for children in El Salvador. And often there were villages where soldiers came and they killed everybody. And often there would be babies left or very young children. And those kids were scooped up and taken and sold. And there was a black market for kids. So to the point where El Salvador now has a commission that post-war trying to reconnect people all over the world who have no idea who their families are. And they've managed to connect a few. They've managed to connect people. You know, the New York Times did a piece several years ago of those children who well-intended people adopted them. Somebody made money on the kids. So at one point, I myself tried to adopt a kid from El Salvador. And El Salvador, at the time, because my children are older now, was banned from the international adoption regulators because of what happened during the war. So you couldn't officially adopt a baby because they had behaved so badly that they were banned from like people go to China or Korea or whatever. Those channels were closed because of this black market that existed during the war with children. So both things, I mean, I don't know if they've opened that, but when I was trying to adopt a kid from El Salvador, I could not do it because of that reason. Because I wanted to, you know, legally adopt the baby and bring, you know, be my baby, right? But I do know that they continue to have this nonprofit in El Salvador working to reconnect people. Es terrible, historias terribles de la guerra. And then my mom's name is Luna. Her family's Los Luna. My father's name is Castro, so I wear both names. They're not hyphenated. They're Castro Luna, right? A lot of people want to put up, and I'm like, no. When I graduated from school, I had to fight with the school people because they wanted to put Castro Luna with a hyphen. It's like, no, you don't. This is because of my dad and my mom, and that's how it is in most Latin American countries. We wear both names. And I do have a poem. How about if I read the poem and then call it quits?
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Is that good, everybody? Yeah? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, because we wrote the book, going through the trauma and experience of that, it has to be really self-reflective. So I just wanted to ask, what are some things that you might have learned about yourself while writing this? Just like, do you feel like you learned?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that question. It took me, I was telling Tony, there's a poem here about pupusas that I wrote about 8 years ago. So some of these poems are really old and some of the poems are more recent. Parallel to this set of poems, I was also working on a memoir, so on a book, right, that's prose. And it's taken me a really long time, partly because sometimes all I could write was a paragraph. You know, I ended up in the hospital 2 times writing about the war, convinced that I had heart attacks. And the episodes were maybe 5 years in between the first one and the second one, where I really thought I was having a heart attack. Well, the first time my colleagues thought I was having a heart attack, because I lived in a place that had a lot of gun violence, and every time I hadn't put the two together, but the gun violence would just make a wreck. My hands would start peeling and cracking, and I hadn't yet connected that the violence, the urban violence, that was triggering the war violence. I hadn't figured that out yet, and I lived with this crazy pain, and so they took me to the hospital. They hooked me all up, and I didn't have a heart attack. I was just suffering from terrible stress. And even then the doctors didn't put it together. And I signed a stack of papers saying, I'm walking away at my own risk. I may still die from this heart attack, but whatever. And the second time it happened was while I was writing. I was writing about the killing of one of my cousins. And that afternoon, my husband came from work and I said, I think I need to go to the hospital. The pain was so intense. It was just too real to ignore. And this time they were they hooked me. I mean, when you walk into an emergency room with heart attack symptoms, they take it seriously. And again, they did all kinds of tests, and the test showed up positive. I mean, not that my heart and my breathing, my blood levels, everything were normal. And then I realized, sitting there with my husband, I started laughing. I said, I think this is because I was writing about the war. I think that's what happened. And then I thought, I don't suffer from a heart attack. I suffer from war. That's my problem. That's my illness. So yes, it's been hard at times. Yeah. Yeah.
Salvador is so fortunate now, after all it's done, all the struggle, did that pain, etc. She put out that a lot of information is out there for years. We are in San Francisco to keep it going as well. But they're so fortunate to have you now to continue.
Gracias.
Continue going. So people have to understand they will. My name is Guadalupe, as I mentioned, in San Francisco.
I was going to say, we were at the Floricanto Festival in San Francisco. Oh my God, that's amazing. Oh my God. Yes, we did. I thought I recognized you when you walked in. Yes, con Leticia Hernandez Linares. Oh my God, I want to cry. That's incredible. That's incredible. I was just reading from Cipota. That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you for being here.
It's incredible what we need.
Yeah.
More poesía, more poetry.
Yes.
Thanks for coming here. I was used to, a number of years back, working, organizing teachers, And he got me and had the reading out there in Houston.
We gotta do it again, Central American, yeah. I just saw him get an award and be recognized in the most loving way at the Mission Cultural Center in San Francisco 2 weeks ago. Yeah, yeah. Amazing, amazing. So I could read this poem, Clove and Moon, because, yeah, it's the history of us not being seen, right? Clove and Moon. The officer in charge of processing my family's entrance to the United States stated that from that moment on, my name was to be Claudia Castro. The passport says her name is Claudia Castro Luna, my mother objected. Here we only use one last name, said the officer, and closed the matter with the gavel of his voice. Your moon got taken away from you, said my friend, when I recounted the story. But when the officer eclipsed the Luna of my name, the sensation was more like having a limb chopped off. For years I walked like that, cloven, until pen in hand, I began to weave into blank pages tamales de lote, scent of hierbabuena, spells of flor de muerto, the riot of a Tuesday market in Ahuachapán, the náhuatl sageness of my abuela. I did not know then that weaving like this, warp of memory, weft of daring, had the power to sew back the name chopped off at an INS center on a January morning in 1981. All I know is that one day I walked into a Social Security office, took the number, and waited my turn to expand the canon of last names in this country. I pilgrimaged the Department of Motor Vehicles, registrar's offices, bank teller windows, and once La Luna hung again in the firmament of my name, its light spilled beneath my skin and filtered back, into the world from the open mouths of a million pores.
Wow, that was beautiful. That really was beautiful. Thank you so much. I do want you to meet her, get your book signed. I'm going to make 3 more announcements. One are some promises. Second will be a little bit of housekeeping. And then third will be previews for our next sets of readings. Let's make some promises. Y'all want Claudia back?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to bring Claudia back to Texas. Roberto, you want to come back to Houston with Claudia? También, maybe we all go back to Houston? Not now, but in the future, we bring her back. We do a nice tour, Central American tour like we did now.
Yes.
No, all right. Let's do that. We're going to do it. We're going to be working on that.
But he is not very good. He was much better. He said to tell you the same thing. Anytime you need him, he's heard of you too.
I love it. Let's do that. Let's do that.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, he says, tell him whatever you want.
I love it. So we're going to do that. We're going to work on that. That's what this is about. This is not a typical corporate transaction, right? Because we're learning more about each other.
We formed the Floricanto series, Alejandro and I, maybe a couple of days
Love it.
back in San Francisco.
Love it.
So maybe we can do it here, Floricanto.
Love it. And let's and this is a good chance to recapitulate what we did now this time around with this base here. We got the Guadalupe Latino Bookstore ordered the books. We took those books to Houston because there's not a Latino bookstore there. We did a great event there in the Central American community because there's more Central Americans in Houston. That's just a fact. And then from there, we drove 3 hours to Austin to La Peña Cultural Center. Right there is the site of the Liberating Latino Underground Library. And there's not Latino bookstores in Austin either. We did a great reading there, and they want us back. So we go to Houston, Austin, come back here, and then we'll keep thinking up more ideas. You know, so it's going to happen. I'm excited.
The numbers of the population of Texas, Mexicano, Chicano, Raza, etc. is incredible. So that every time we see poetry in Raza, not many people there, it's kind of questionable. What is it? But yeah, I think that's good stuff.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. The other thing I'm going to add too is Chicanos and Mexican Americans. We were fighting when Arizona banned Mexican American studies, and we were fighting for Chicano civil rights and Mexican American history, but we weren't excluding anybody. It's just that we were being directly attacked. On that note, we fought and came back to fight for Mexican American history in the schools, which is now an elective. What should be coming down the pipeline would be Salvadoran American studies, Guatemalan American studies. And here's why it should be its own discipline. Otherwise, if it's just a general class, Salvadoran Americans get 1 week. And just from hearing now, they need the whole semester. So we'll work on that as well. Housekeeping. So yes, so please do replenish your family library. Give this to your nephews, nieces. In a little bit, you can come up, you can get your book signed, get a picture with her, and then you can pay for the book on the way out. You can text your friends and say, hey, you want me to get a cool book for you? To continue to support that, and we look forward to that. And then, of course, this is the first Friday reading, so every first Friday of the month we have a reading, and humildemente les digo that next up, it will be my book. So August 5th, it's the launch of the Tip of the Pyramid, Cultivating Community Cultural Capital. So thank you, appreciate that. And I'm going to pass up a sign-up sheet. If you'd like to join Nuestra Palabra San Antonio, then we can have you involved to work out here as well. So hey, thank you so much for coming out today. And a lot of you can kindly come up here. Thanks for getting the address up straight now.
What Tony didn't say is that his book narrates the Libro Traficante. Tony's new book is about Libro Traficante and the journey. Yeah, this is like essential. This is an American story of resistance, right? Because that's what Libro Traficante did. The books were banned, and you said no. We're bringing the books over there.
Democracy Now! Noticed.
Exactly. I met Tony on television in Democracy Now! All those years ago. So when he invited me to come here, today's my wedding anniversary. He said July 1st.